All right, today we're starting off our new section with the non-vascular plants. These are the plants that lack xylem and phloem, that conductive tissues that you see in the plants that have seeds. They're plants that are often small, found in dark places that are usually pretty moist, but they have the typical plant life cycle. They show they do photosynthesis in the same way as modern plants do, and they can be very abundant in some places. So we sometimes call these the bryophytes. They include the liverworts, the hornworts, the mosses, and so kind of a couple nice pictures that we show there. These are the most primitive of the land plants. Um, and they show close relationship with the green algae. And like the green algae, they don't have roots, don't use conductive tissues, but they do have chloroplasts. And they have the same pigments for photosynthesis that you find in the green algae. Okay, that's chlorophyll A, chlorophyll B, and they have the same accessory pigments, the carotenoids. Okay, the chloroplasts generally look the same. They have one circular chromosome, 70S ribosome. They reproduce by binary fission, and they show sequence similarity to the cyanobacteria. So there you see liverworts, mosses, hornworts. Those are the bryophytes. That's what we're covering today. There's a comparison of the chloroplasts and the cyanobacteria. Um, the chloroplast has, as I mentioned, a singular circular chromosome. The thylakoids and the grana that you see inside, these are the internal membranes of the chloroplast. That is thought to correspond to a highly folded inner membrane of cyanobacteria. What the chloroplast has lost as a cell wall and then probably been engulfed by a secondary host membrane. So a similar size, similar structure, reproduces the same way, produces proteins the same way, things like that. Remember, plants are eukaryotes, and so they have a similar life cycle to other plants, or bryophytes do. That means they have this alternation of generations where they go from a diploid or sporophyte generation to a gametophyte generation, which is haploid. And so there's mitosis and meiosis at specific times. In most familiar plants, the sporophyte is the major part of the plant, the diploid body. But in the bryophytes, the both the sporophyte and the gametophyte are multicellular and are present and in significant amounts. The gametophyte is not small and just a sperm and an egg or a pollen and something like that. It's actually pretty large. So here's the liverworts. The liverworts, again, the main part of the body is the gametophyte. The leaf structure that you see has no roots, has no conductive tissue, does not have stomata. It's a relatively flat leaf-like structure that's weakly attached to a substrate. You only find these in relatively damp sites. The main part of the life, and again, is the gametophyte. And then from the gametophyte, the that there is an anthropore and an archegonia, where the cells that are going to fertilize to produce the sporophyte are found there. And the sperm cell has to swim over from one to the other, so this reproduction can only happen when it's wet. And fertilization occurs, and then the sporophyte grows from a zygote that then grows on the underside of the archegonia, and it goes through um, meiosis. After it grows a certain while, the embryo grows and undergoes meiosis and produces spores that are released and can form a new gametophyte. Okay, there's something like 9,000 species of these. They occur almost worldwide from the Arctic to the tropics. Very, very small, abundant locally, but you know, live under large plants, and so have to be able to tolerate those conditions. The next big group are the mosses. And I think the mosses most people are familiar with. There's 12,000 species, again from the Arctics to the tropics. They prefer damp sites. They don't want to be in direct sun often. Uh, they're mostly small, but they can be very abundant. And in some places, in some habitats, they may be a dominant plant, but they're never going to be more than 6 feet high. And again, here we have distinct gametophytes and sporophytes, and the gametophyte is pretty much the dominant structure. And the sporophyte grows on the gametophyte again. So the gametophyte is the haploid growing part of the plant that's large and visible. It doesn't have roots per se, but it has rhizoid-like structures that attach and hold it down. It grows when it's damp. When it is dry, it just dries out and remains. And the sperm and egg grow on top of the gametophyte. Again, the sperm have to swim over to the egg cells, and they swim over when it's wet and fertilization occurs. And then the sporophyte grows out of the top of the gametophyte. Okay, and so you get fertilization and mitosis. Then the mature sporophyte goes through meiosis, and I mean you can see it growing out of the gametophyte there, and then the fertilized or at the end of meiosis, then you have spores that are formed and can disseminate if they fall onto a wet spot. Okay, again, there's lots of mosses. In some habitats, they're very, very abundant. They can dry out completely, but they need to be wet to be active, and how things are going there. Okay. Let's see. Whoops, I went the wrong way. The hornworts. Hornworts are a smaller group, fewer species, but they are found worldwide. They are, again, very small, but can be locally abundant. With all of the bryophytes, we don't have a good fossil record. They're small plants. They don't produce a lot of hard parts, and so we just don't have a good fossil record. But here we have Cretaceous fossils. But we think these guys go back quite far, much farther, 400 million years possibly. Again, here, the main part of the organism is the gametophyte, so it's diploid. And then from the surface of the gametophyte, you get an antheridium and an archegonium, where some cells become sperm and other cells become egg. The sperm swim over to the egg, and you have a fertilization occurs. And then the sporophyte grows out of the top of the gametophyte, and it's growing upward. And again, there will be mitosis in the sporophyte, and it will go through then meiosis to produce spores, and the spores can form a new gametophyte plant. Okay, so that's it. Not a lot of diversity, not a lot of huge importance as far as people don't use these very often as a source of food. There are some animals like reindeer and caribou that specialize on eating some bryophytes, the mosses, but there's not a huge abundance of them. We sometimes use them for science. for experiments. Um, we examine them to see their tolerance for water loss. We look at the genetic code of them. Um, you know, we but in this case, the 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 sequence materials weren't as important in classification. We knew that these were simple plants, that we knew they lacked features that you found in other plants. They didn't have stems, roots, and leaves. We just didn't see those things. And so liverworts, mosses, hornworts, these are relatively simple. Um, they, the leaves don't have venation. They don't have the vascular tissues. They don't have seeds. We knew that these were pretty simple. Okay, so next time we're going to start exploring some of the more interesting plants, plants that get much larger, plants that can transport water and nutrients.